Okay, everyone, we are back and we are here to take on this project of our CTEA logs, which is sort of a classroom logging system for students. And the next step in our evolution is to essentially um, put our array of students into a database as opposed to whenever the server restarts, like so. Oops. All of our students get cleared out. So, do you have any questions so far?
I guess like if had I been doing this by myself, without watching a video or without knowing what was going on, like I probably would not have realized like that I needed to use like body parser, for example, that npm module, or like I probably wouldn't have thought to put the students array onto the server like the way you did right there. I'm wondering like how I would have gotten to that point where I would have realized, okay, I'm storing like JavaScript objects, and I should use body parser, and I should do this kind of stuff. Like how would you go about like learning that stuff, or even knowing to do that? The
Yeah.
API stuff also.
So the body parser issue, that's a tough bug if you're new. Like you would have gotten hung up on that potentially.
Yeah.
So like I would have done like I would have Googled Express.js um, body undefined, which is exactly what I Googled. I did it really quick in the last video, but if you look
Mhm.
here, I looked at the first answer on Stack Overflow. Usually I just skip the question, I go right to the answer. I just I just trust Google's algorithm that it's like got what I want. I just go right to the answer. It's like super quick. And This sentence caught my eye. You must make sure you define all configurations before defining routes. So these are routes, you know, and they're
Yeah.
saying you got to do this stuff before you do the routes. Um, and then I just look at the example. Sometimes I'll just skip right to the example and be like, okay, what am I missing? Oh, app.configure. Um, Maybe I'll look at some more examples. I mean, this is exactly what I did. I just pasted it in word for word. So this is a little bit newer. This is from 2015. This one's from 2012.
That's a
So
little.
yeah. I mean, I knew this is the newer one from experience,
Yeah.
but if I yeah, I mean, it helps to go with the more recent answers. Sometimes the upvoted ones can be kind of old, so keep that in mind. But
And
yeah,
these routes are different than like Angular JS routes also, right?
yeah, and we haven't even gotten into that yet. But yeah, there's front end routing in AngularJS. Um, so usually routes on the server are for API stuff like JSON stuff, and the front end routes are for like different web pages in a single page app.
Yeah.
So
Like
it's,
if I have multiple classes, like if I want to route to another class,
you mean
maybe
classes in like students like in a
student.
school class?
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
school
If you have
classes.
multiple
Yeah.
periods throughout the day, you go to period three. That's a different route on your web app. Yeah,
Okay.
that's totally true. And both of those routes will use the same API routes on the server. So
Mhm.
let's adjust that. And then as per knowing about these routes, I mean, again, if you watch my previous videos, I explain the reason for using routes. Um, it explains why you need them in order to save data on the server. And if you don't save data on the server, I demonstrate how every time you refresh the page, you're losing the data, which is ridiculous. Um, that's like very inflexible and as you can imagine, right? Does that make sense? Like as the
Yeah, that
reason
makes
why?
sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's what you're asking,
Yeah.
right? You're asking why. Oops, I think he's falling.
Like, yeah, like how you would have known to do that, to use routes, to use the API. I guess
Hmm.
maybe would be the question.
Watch Mittens. That's all I could say because it tells you
I did,
how to
I
make an
did
app.
watch
Like because
it.
your goal
I
is
did
to make
watch
an
it.
app, right? To make a web app.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So you have to go through a tutorial on how to make a web app, and it's going to explain why you need this stuff. I did that in the
It,
Mittens. You know, you know what I
I
mean?
I did watch mittens. I did
Okay.
watch mittens. I use mittens, and that's
Well, it
what I
doesn't have to
use.
be Mittens. It could be any tutorial. Like you should go. Like if you have no idea like any of this stuff, you should go through some sort of like end to end tutorial, right? I mean, I'm just saying this for people's benefit so that they know, like, if they're not like catching some of this stuff that I'm going through.
Hmm.
Not only did I go through to my tutorial, but you should also just like take some sort of tutorial that makes a basic web app and treat this video series that we're doing now, treat this as like an example of a real world situation where you're putting into practice what you learned in those tutorials. You
Yeah,
know what I
that's
mean?
definitely a good idea.
So it's another step in the evolution, and I think since you've been through the tutorial already, I think you're ready to take this next step. Um, so we're gonna go a little bit quicker. Like I'm not gonna explain this stuff
I,
why we need the routes.
I figured I'd ask for the general
Yeah.
audience.
No, it's
Yeah.
a good question. Good question. Keep doing
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
let's just dive right into it. And you might be
Let's do
wondering,
it.
how do I know Mongoose is the right way to go?
That I
Um,
have not used before. I've used
yeah,
Mongo straight up with the Node's driver, but I've never used Mongoose. So
yeah.
this
I think I found out about Mongoose as I was starting to get into these like tutorials on like learning from other people's tutorials on how to do like mean stack. And people were saying, yeah, you should probably use Mongoose. And I started playing around with it, and I mean, at the end of the day, you don't need it, but it's just I tend to go with the industry standards, and the industry standards kind of show that people use something more than just the basic MongoDB. Like MongoDB is awesome um, by itself, but when you work in the industry, you're going to be working with other people, and to work with other people, you kind of have to have some structure around what you do. And
mhm.
MongoDB is the functionality, and Mongoose gives you the structure. So this is what people use. It's called an ODM, object data model or something like that. Very simple to get started. You require Mongoose in your project. You connect to your MongoDB server, and then you specify a model. That's the new thing. And then instead of using the MongoDB driver to save your objects, now you use this class that you made, this whatever class you define. And that's pretty much it. And then it all builds off of that. So let's try this out. So let me cancel the server. I think you have Mongo running, right? Yeah, you do have Mongo running.
I do have it. Yeah, it might be an old
Oh,
version, but it's fine.
connect failed.
Oh, actually, I don't have Mongo running.
Oh, you don't have
You
running.
have to do
Okay, let me just
MongoDB.
let me just start up another window here.
Yeah,
Mongod. Okay,
I'm not sure
MongoDB. Yeah,
what version. 3.2.4
this is
might be an old version.
yeah, it's 324. Doesn't matter. Whatever. Mongo. Okay, so now I'm connected. So list DB, or is it list collections? Is it show
Yeah, they're up to
collections?
3.4, but it's okay.
Quotes. Okay. Oh, this is your other web app. Okay. Anyway, I'm gonna get out of this right now. My MongoD is still running in the background. On my personal computer, I have MongoD running as a service on you could do that on here or on Mac. So you can just type Mongo from anywhere, whenever, even if you restart your computer, you could type it and it'll connect. So anyway, let's do the thing I was gonna do. So I was gonna do npm install that mongoose -- save, like so. And while that installs, I'm gonna require mongoose in my project, like so.
Is it okay to put all this stuff in the server.js file, or should we like separate it? At what point do you decide like
Uh,
maybe I should start like modularizing this stuff?
as it gets bigger, like once this hits like maybe like 200, 300 lines, I might start out by taking all these routes and putting it in a separate file. That's probably
Okay.
the easiest thing. This setup stuff is a little more complex. You might want to put like your app setup stuff in another file too.
Hmm.
So now I could do mongoose.connect. You have it on localhost slash, let's call it slash CTA logs. So that'll be the database name. Let's see if we get any errors. Let's just make sure we don't have any problems here. Node mon server. Okay, doesn't look like there's any errors. Now we gotta define a model. So I'm gonna copy paste this right from their website because I don't want to have to think about it. Let's put it right here. Var student mongoose.model student, and then now we can sort of get into the fields. So we have first name. Oops. first name, last name, student ID, could be a number. And these you can get from the Mongoose website. It tells you what the different object types are.
Okay.
Late. This could be, I think what you got to do is do this. You have to do array and another object where you have date, time, date. Date is the object type. Date time is what you called it, right, in your code.
Mm-hmm.
When you
Yeah.
add a new, yeah, date time right here. Okay. And yeah, that'll be fine for now. Eventually, you might want to add more information. Like you said, you want to put like in and out for the bathroom.
Yeah.
But yeah, the benefit of having this schema right here is it shows your team exactly, you know, the structure of how this should be used. So then out of uniform, and then bathroom. Okay. Okay. And then lastly, you can make a new one. So here, when I add a student, so instead of pushing it onto the array, I could do something like var student equals new capital S student, because that's what I defined up top. It was a capital S. And then I could just put in rec.body right here. And this is what I mean by backend validation, because you could put like first name string, you could add stuff like required here. And Mongoose will do like just certain checks based on the schema that you defined.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see it in the quick start guide if you have an example. API docs. Schema. So you could do it's somewhere in here. Yeah. I mean, you could do something like type string and then required true.
Yeah.
Like so. And now, okay, so let's go back to here. Let's see if this works now. Oh, first of all, let me actually delete this real quick. See, I'm going to delete this array now. Now that I have a database thing, I'm just going to delete this array that we had of students. I'm going to delete the thing that pushes it. And then, oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to actually save it. So now I could do student.save. And then, let's see, there's two functions. So .save, it gives back two functions, success function and then like a failure function. Oh, you know what? Never mind. Forget what I just said. It gives back one function with an error object, which is null if there's no error. So like if there is an error, this is the syntax that I normally do. If there's an error, then return next error. And next is that function, that express function for just passing it along to the next thing with the error. And it gets passed down and down and down until it hits your error handler, which we don't have yet, but that's fine. We'll worry about that later. And then instead of sending it back right away, I'll send back the response after we save it. If I put, do you notice how that works? If it's down here, it's not, it might. In fact, I mean, I guess we could just send back the response regardless of whether it saves correctly, but I like to do it, if it saves correctly. And then for returning the list of students, we could do, how do we, save, find, okay, you gotta do student.find. Okay, so for here, instead of returning a student array, you gotta do student.find, and I think you could just leave out the first. I mean, you could put like an empty thing like that just to show that you want all the students. So you can return a function. Again, ERR for errors, and then students. Oops. Okay. And then if there's an error, return next error, just like before. And then you could do return res.json students. Oops. And then we can delete this. So that's it. Now we're fully database tized. Refresh. Okay, so now there's no students yet. So let's add our first student. Bob, George, 1, 2, 3, 4. Add student. And there we go. Yeah. So let's see. It has an ID. It's got a first name, a last name, student ID, and then the bathroom, out of form, uniform, late. So let's try this. Bob. Oh, you know what we didn't do yet? We didn't make these hit the database. I just realized.
Yeah.
Oh, it actually adds it. Yeah, but it's not saved in the database. Okay, well that's Mongoose. You know, off of this next video, before the next video, we're actually gonna hook up the other things, or we can maybe put that in another video. What do you want to do? Should we put the saving?
We should probably put this in this video because it's still Mongoose we're hitting, right?
Okay. All right. So before this video is over, real quick, I'm gonna make it so that when you log an event, like if they went to the bathroom or if they're late, oops, if they're late, it'll it logged it here, but when I refresh it, it's not logged in the database. So I got to log that in the database. So what I need is another. Oops. I'm gonna need another route here. So not only just posting students, we're gonna need like put students. Put means update, right? So put students, and maybe like event type. So depending on if they're late or in the bathroom, we'll change which array it goes into.
Why the colon in front of event type?
So what that allows us to do is allows us to send data to API students, late, anything that like.
Oh, it's gonna like take in whatever.
Yeah, whatever I type. In fact, the proper way to do this is to do another slash and then say like event or like log event. Let me think the best way to do this. Or add event. There's lots of different ways you can like set this up. So what actually you can do is let me put this here. So I could do API students add event and then the actual event type. That's a little more clear. So then you could do something like var event type equals rec.params.event type. And this matches this right here. You can call this variable whatever, but these have to match. So now you have the event type, and then now you can do that switch statement that we had on the front end. Okay. So, okay, this is gonna get a little complicated. Students. You actually have to have the student ID too. Student ID. Because otherwise you don't know which student to add the event to. Right?
Yeah.
Student ID, event type. So, okay, so if event type is late, if event type is out of uniform, event type bathroom. We also don't need this function, date.now. So first of all, we figure out what the event type is, then we figure out what time it is right now. So time, what do you call it? Var time in milliseconds. So you save that. And then, what do I have? Date time, okay. event type, time milliseconds, that you figure out using this if statement what to do next. But before you get to that, you first have to find the student that you're going to edit. So you need to do student.find. I'm going to copy this over here. Student.find underscore ID. If you remember, we have an underscore ID of our student. Underscore ID, that's, if you remember from the other videos, the other series, that every object you put into MongoDB gets assigned an ID. So that ID is useful for finding the thing that you need to update or delete.
That's the object ID? Is it like a different?
Yeah, that's the. This is separate from the student ID. That's something we made. But every time you put an
Yeah.
object into the database, if you don't specify it yourself,
Yeah, it's your
MongoDB
object
will
ID.
make one for you.
Gotcha.
So let's find it where the ID is equal to. Let me just copy this. Student ID. Find the student where the student ID is what? Oh, it should be called find one, by the way. If you do find one, students won't be an array. It'll just be like one object. So it's easier to work with. So I could just do student.find1. If error, return next error. If not student, just return res.send. Just basically cancel the whole thing. Just don't do anything else. Otherwise, if there's a student, then we could work with it. So now we could do the if statement. So let me copy this up here. So now we did student.push. So it's going to be student.late.push, actually. Push on the time in milliseconds, like so. And let's copy this. Okay, student.outOfUniform, student.bathroom. And then after you edited the array, now you got to save it. So
Will that work? Because in your find one function, the first parameter, the first argument, ID colon student ID, is that gonna check the correct? Wait, how?
Oh, yeah, it's a little confusing because you called it student ID.
Yeah,
This should really be called like school ID or something like that, because student's the name
yeah.
of the object. So whenever I talk about student ID as a human being, basically, I'm really talking about the underscore ID.
Okay,
So that could
the
be kind of
object ID.
confusing. We'll change that later. Let's
Okay.
just keep going for now. Student dot save. Let's just see if they talk about this real quick. Updating. API. Okay. Anyway, okay. I think this should work. Dot save and then function error, whatever. If there's an error, then return next error. Again, next is the express.js function. And then if all goes well, I'm just going to do return res.send. And that's it. Let me delete all this stuff. And that was a big one, so hopefully it works and there's no issues. Famous last words. Refresh. So on the front end now, we don't need this anymore because we're not going to be doing this on the front end. We're not going to be, we're going to verify it. If this, okay, now this is the part we're going to change. So we're not going to do that. We're going to hide the modal, and then we are going to do our HTTP request for posting that thing that we just did. Or sorry, it should be put. So HTTP dot put slash API slash students slash, and if we have our active student set correctly, we just do this: active student ID plus the event, or add event. Is that what we called it? Yeah, add event. And then slash event type. That should work right there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this dot then function. After it comes
Maybe
back,
add a
I'm
word
going to
wrap.
refresh. Huh?
Maybe add word wraps because
Oh, yeah, maybe. Let me see. Okay.
yeah.
So that long string that we did for our API, we're going to hit it. And then when it comes back okay, we're going to refresh the student. So let's see if this works. Refresh. Bob, late. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moment of truth. Active student is not defined. Active student. Oh, whoops. Sorry. It should be scoped at active student.
Yeah.
Everyone makes mistakes. Okay, try this again. Late. 1, 2, 3, 4. Event type is not defined. How is it not defined? It's right here. Oh, that's a different function. The other function we save it. This one we have to do scoped.event type. Okay. I was looking at this function thinking it was the top of this one. Okay. Refresh. Bob. Late. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we go. Oh, one thing it did is that it put an ID right into the that date type object, which is fine for now. I mean, you can actually in your model you can say something like underscore ID false, just because you don't really need an ID for each little thing.
Yeah.
Just Mongo likes to put IDs on everything, which is kind of unnecessary. Well, I mean, it kind of is necessary, but like for a simple little app, you don't need it. So now let me try this one more time. Out of uniform, 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we go. We have a date time right here. And Mongoose stores it, I think, as a string. So today's the 28th, and this is the current time. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We got it working. Good job, guys. Let's take a break, relax, crack open a cold one, and we'll resume our journey to the classroom later. See you guys later.